Today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
We made an announcement, I think in January, that was just after actually 5 months of being in market. And again, people didn't really know us all that much, like widely in the US. Some people that are interested in the space and follow us from Europe obviously do, or that have friends over in the EU that use us. But we managed to actually get to 250,000 signups in just literally 5 months. So growth is going quite well, but we're also still improving on our product.
Welcome to the Tearsheet Podcast. I'm Zack Miller. N26 was the first foreign challenger bank to launch in the US. When you speak with CEO Nic Kopp, you know it was no simple feat. Now 5 months in the market, Kopp joins us on the podcast to discuss the launch process and what it takes to bring a challenger bank online. We discuss who's using N26 in the US and what they're using it for. We talk about user acquisition and how the company was able to get its first 250,000 users. Nic Kopp is my guest today on the Tearsheet Podcast. I wanted to tell you about Tearsheet's newest online conference, Day-to-Day 2020. Entire financial ecosystems are emerging around financial institutions and large fintech companies with data at its core. We're spending 3 days hearing from top executives at firms like Fiserv, MX, Wells Fargo, Envestnet Yodlee, Plaid, and more about how they are best leveraging customer data to help deliver better products and services. Day-to-Day 2020 is all about data sharing, data aggregation, and personalization. It's about the future of finance. For more information, click on the Day-to-Day conference button at the top of our website, tearsheet.co.
Hi, good to be on the show. I'm Nic Kopp, the US CEO of N26. N26 is a challenger bank headquartered out of Berlin, Germany. We're live in 24 European markets and have just launched last summer, also here in the United States. We are an app that's basically fast, free, and has a few really neat features to use. We help with your mobile banking affairs and finances in more general.
So I think, Nick, the last time we spoke live, you hadn't fully launched in the US. And so, I'm really happy to talk to you today and get caught up on what N26 is doing in the market. You just had an extension of the last funding round as well. Can we start with that?
Yeah, no, happy to share a little bit. I think we announced, I don't know, that's maybe two or 3 weeks ago. We announced an extension of our Series D. The round was led by existing investors, and it'll help us further build products and expand into markets where we're currently in, and potentially new ones, where we are. Having, I think, in general, with a general economic crisis and COVID going on, I think there's a lot of hardship out there, and some industries are really taking a hit. Mobile banking, thankfully, is not one of these. I think we're actually to quite the opposite. We see some positive developments where the acceleration of the trend, i.e. the trend from you do your banking first in store or in branches, then you go online, and then now we're sort of in that mobile world. I think that trend that is underway is really accelerating in a time where you can't physically go out and actually visit a branch. So the $100 million that we raised will help further build out N26, its product offerings, and bring more new good things to our customers.
So are there any data points you can point to during this crisis? Like, is usage up, downloads up? Like, it sounds like obviously people can't go to branch, they're looking for alternatives. And from some of the data in the aggregate that I've seen, it has benefited the mobile banks. But are there any things you can share even qualitatively with the audience?
Yeah, I'm happy to share some thoughts on. I think more generally, it is that trend that I've been describing that is really accelerating. You see that, for example, in our age groups, where it's not surprising. You probably, as Zack, see that in your own behavior. You do potentially a lot more of the shopping that you would normally do. You now do online through e-commerce stores, or you order your groceries online and so forth. And we see a general shift to more e-commerce spending at N26. But also what you see actually for customers that are a little bit older, for example, 65 and above, you see also a very dramatic shift. So that sort of reinforces that some age groups that maybe have traditionally engaged less with e-commerce are using really their N26 card to do some spending in these areas. So that's one area. You definitely see some of the signups trend more strongly and due to COVID, just as I mentioned before, people can physically not go into branches to open accounts. So that's definitely interesting to see. And also lastly, cash and the usage of cash is, some argue, cash will disappear over the next 5 to 10 years in general. But that current situation with COVID has definitely also shown an increase in contactless payments, either just with the card, I tap and go, or even through wallets like Apple or Google Pay, where you see very strong usage during this current environment, because as you can imagine, again, you don't want to necessarily touch cash or basically interact too closely with even the machines where you type in your PIN code and so forth. So these are sort of the 3 areas where we definitely see meaningful change over the last couple of weeks in a pretty rapid fashion.
So can we take a step back and maybe go through, like, sort of at a high level, the timeline of N26's launch in the US? I know you had set up shop and ended up launching with a partner. Can you just kind of take us through sort of what that looked like?
Yeah, happy to. So we launched, I'm just thinking of the exact date. I think we launched our beta here in the US on 11th of July last year, which meant we had a waitlist at that time of roughly 100,000 people. We onboarded that waitlist onto our platform and gave folks a few weeks to settle in and use and test our product. And then we opened more widely in our public launch on 22nd of August, where we also added 1 or 2 more features. So that was roughly the timeline last year. We were also proud that we were the first European challenger bank to actually have launched in the US at that time, and have since then been doing a lot of work with the team here to better serve our customers. I can talk a little bit about what features we launched and so forth in a bit, but that's sort of the rough timeline as to when we launched, and have since then grown quite quickly. We made an announcement I think in January, that was just after actually 5 months of being in market. And again, people didn't really know us all that much, like widely in the US. Some people that are interested in the space and follow us from Europe obviously do, or that have friends over in the EU that use us. But we managed to actually get to 250,000 signups in just literally 5 months. So growth is going quite well, but we're also still improving on our product. For the early adopters out there that may be listening even, you will have seen that we added a lot of new features over the last couple of months. I'm really proud of the team, actually. I think almost every 2 to 3 weeks we're releasing new features, improving the product. So what have we done? We've made it a lot easier to fund the account, where you can now, through pull within the N26 app, can actually fund your app. We also added that functionality where you can use cards, i.e. debit card, for example, to top up your N26 account. Which I think is a very important first step. You need to get money into the account easily. And then we added free ATM withdrawals and a map to spot certain ATMs within the N26 app. What else did we add? We added Apple Pay. We are in the process of also looking at how to put out Google Pay functionality for our customers and so forth. So there's a little bit of a laundry list of things, but literally just within a couple of months, we've managed to add a lot of new features that make it easier and even more seamless to use the N26 account here in the US.
Awesome. And I know that you were instrumental in opening up a lot of the early markets for N26. How was opening up the US different, I guess, from some of your other experiences?
Yeah, good question. So I think, first of all, we need to put into context the regulatory framework. In the US, we're partnering here with Axos Bank, and our accounts are FDIC insured, but we partner with Axos Bank, and they sponsor our program, is the right technical term. Mm-hmm. In Europe, when we launched into new markets, we were first initially only in Germany and Austria, actually only in German language when we started out. When we then started internationalizing the product, that had a huge draw in Germany to markets like France, Italy, Spain, and so forth. We obviously first had to translate the product into another language. And also, the good thing about Europe is you can actually passport your banking license into these markets. So what does that mean? If you launch in France, you actually can use your German banking license, which we have from BaFin, and passport that license into the French market, which just from a regulatory side is a little bit easier to expand into new markets. So it's more of a translation thing. You need to adapt certain local features versus here in the US, it was a more of a fundamental lift because the regulatory framework as well as some of the payment schemes are different to what we use in Europe.
That makes a lot of sense. And so you talked in 5 months, you got to 250,000 users, lots of new features launched. Well, how did you get those users? I know that when we first spoke, you said N26 kind of relied a lot on word of mouth and sort of viral sharing of the app. Was that the same? Was that also the case in the US?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Word of mouth, the more viral, organic part of our growth is fundamentally important. I think you can only grow a successful brand if you have that part of growth be really healthy and strong. So I think that there are some people that know us from Europe that helped us with the early buzz here in the United States, and you also have some people just online that leave good reviews on our product, and that way sort of the fire spreads a little bit on N26, and that we're actually in market. Having said that, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of adoption and brand awareness of N26 and our product here in the US. So I think we have a long way ahead of us still, and we are targeted in a targeted fashion, also using more paid channels. So for example, we did an out of home campaign when we launched. I think that was sort of in fall 2019, fall last year.
I remember covering
to accompany
that.
our launch in New York, which just helps with that awareness and bringing that brand to life versus just seeing it through your friends or online somewhere. So we do aid some of our organic growth with these type of campaigns. Obviously now during COVID, a little bit less relevant because people are not out currently. And then also we use some of the more traditional marketing channels like Google or Facebook to further supplement some of the growth that we have. So we have a multi-pronged strategy, but I think the organic piece is really the most important one, because if that's healthy, if people come natural to your site, friends talk about it, and you hear about it through your network, and that's when I think growth is really healthy and strong.
Absolutely. And what would you say the brand represents in the US market? What are like the brand's major attributes?
Yeah. We're actually debating that a little bit internally.
I'm sure it evolves over time too, right?
Exactly. And we also wanted, like at N26, we're building really one global product. We're building one global company. Like, how can you transform or transmit some of your brand values globally, while keeping the global consistency while keeping some of the nuances here also locally. So that's a lot of debate going on there. But at the end of the day, I think one fundamental pillar of our brand is a beautifully simple product. Again, I refer it back to the product because I think product and brand are highly intertwined, but like beautifully simple is something that really sticks with me and that I want to emphasize at a global level, but also here in the US, because I think a beautiful and easy to use product is really the most important essence actually of a lot of the adoption that then consumers will have. Obviously the price and the offering needs to be right, but that like almost intangible piece is hugely important in today's world. So I think that's definitely one. Secure is another big attribute that we want to focus on, because I think especially in today's world where there's a lot of uncertainty, in today's world where you also hear a lot about, I don't know, data theft or other like online scams as well. I think it's very important to sort of have a secure product. Again, I'm linking back to the product because brand and product are highly intertwined, but also like make sure you emphasize that security with some of the features that we have, as people really need to like. It is really important for people to feel that their money is safe, and also the product that they use is facilitating that, especially, and I want to add that, especially at this sort of intersection where we play, where you put together technology that makes some people uncomfortable, like because they don't fully understand it, they don't know, again, they don't know where the data is going, etc. But also finance, which is another sort of part of a lot of people's lives where they, especially here in the US, people may live more paycheck to paycheck, or have more fundamental struggles with less of a social system to fall back on than in other countries throughout the world. So that intersection between tech and finance, I think, is very important. If you play at that intersection to portray security. And then I think the last bit that I really want us to portray also through our brand, but frankly, again, through our product, is having the best product also on a functional level. Like, it's fast, it's free of charge or minimal cost involved. And really that sort of functional element where people want to just get something that gives them something good, that provides some tangible, rational value, I think is also very important to embody. So these are sort of the three areas that I think will lead N26 to success. A beautifully simple product, a secure and safe product, and one that provides tangible functional benefits.
Well put. Do you have a feeling like we've seen sort of an evolution, it looks like, in your business and some of your competitors that, I guess a lot of the early adopters were taking out a secondary sort of account, and there's this sort of evolution to get them to use this as their primary account, a digital bank as their primary account. Do you have a feeling, I guess, in the U.S., are the customers using this? Are you seeing something similar? Are you seeing something different? How are they using the account? Is there, even with the little data that you have, is there sort of an evolution in their behavior as well?
Yes, I think sort of the area that you touch on around the evolution of product adoption, like how do people hear about you, then how do they first engage with you, how do they stay, and so forth, is a really important question, I think, frankly, for any consumer startup that is trying to build a good business and make customers happy. I think in our case, the question between secondary and primary accounts in the mobile banking space is a very relevant one. I agree. For us, what we see, I think in Europe, we definitely had that sort of transition through first accounts that people may have used for travels or travel sake because we have good foreign exchange offerings and so forth, into sort of a transition where people then go with us to Thailand with the card and realize, oh, hey, this is actually a really cool product. It works really nicely. It can do everything that my normal bank can do too. Like, why shouldn't I just stick with it when I return from my beach vacation? So I think that's definitely something that we saw in Europe, for example, with some of the primary expat cases that we had in the very early days a couple of years ago, where people then migrate into the more, day-to-day, your paycheck comes in, all your key bills go out of the account behavior. You have that similar trends also here in the US from what I can see. What I see though here in the US, which is actually quite, is a positive surprise for me coming in. I had more, I thought it was going to be a longer journey until we got there. We have a lot of use cases already now where you see people depositing their paychecks into N26 accounts and use us as arguably their primary account. If you link it to the paycheck.
That's the main metric, right? Getting to the paycheck?
Exactly. That's one of the key metrics. And then the secondary metric would be also, where do your bills get paid out from? Like that way you create really that primary account where the money comes in and the money goes out on a sort of regular basis. And on the money comes in side, we definitely see, especially actually during COVID, where people may struggle to open other bank accounts, we see a strong direct deposit behavior, which is quite encouraging so far in the US. But I want to wait it out a little more and how the data sort of progresses from here. But so far, I'm actually quite optimistic, and it's going faster than I thought.
Great. And the remaining time that we have, I'm curious, can you give us a little view on where N26 is headed in the US, whether it's new products or expansion? Can you give us a little flavor for that?
Yeah, happy to share out a little bit. So I can't unfortunately disclose all the details on the exact upcoming feature releases, but the one thing that I can say, it'll be a regular pipeline of feature releases. There's a few more things coming out actually this week and next week that we're about to announce, smaller features which are exciting. And then the next bigger release I think that you'll see from us is sometime midsummer, around the July timeframe, where we want to release one bigger feature for our customers that I think will provide a lot of value and excitement for them, which we can then maybe talk a little bit about closer to time or once it's released. So there's definitely a lot in the pipeline smaller incremental releases, but also bigger ones, for example, for the one in July. And frankly, the team is continuously delivering on exactly these type of features. So I think often there is a misconception that startups or like good products are built out of one brilliant idea, and then basically there's a huge step change. And then the innovation, quote unquote, is done. I actually think I'm a believer in some of the opposite, actually, where I think the constant incremental improvement to your product, listening to your customers, get that critical feedback. Like, don't hide, like, get that critical feedback, improve your product, add features, add new ideas from there, and like really bit by bit, like step by step, build that product out into something that's stellar and polished, is the way to go. And I think you can continue and expect good feature releases, continuous releases from us over the coming weeks and months as we grow our customer base, and as we get more feedback on what to build and how to adapt. So from that perspective, stay tuned. There's a lot more in the pipeline, and with the next bigger release coming out in July.
Well, thanks, Nick. Thanks for sharing, the history up to now and a little bit into the future. I appreciate you joining us on the Tearsheet Podcast today.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks for having me.